Hello and welcome again to Relaxing Chess, the type of chess where it's absolutely okay to just lean back and relax, fall asleep if you want to. We are exploring Game 3 of the World Chess Championship, where we see Carlsen-Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces facing off, or squaring off maybe, with all these squares, against Magnus Carlsen, the reigning world champion, with black. And we see e1 here on the first move, possibly heading into the Ruy Lopez, the martial, the anti-martial variation again that we saw in the first game. So far they are repeating the first game. And yes, here we have indeed bishop b5, the Spanish, also known as the Ruy Lopez. We have the Morphy defense again, bishop retreats, knight f6, we are repeating the position with the castles also, still repeating the game from game 1. So who will be the first player to deviate? We see rook e1, getting the rook here on a good diagonal, supporting this pawn. So after this pawn has been supported, white is actually threatening to capture this bishop and win this pawn with this knight. So I guess we will see something like d6 or kicking the bishop, which is the main move that we also saw in the first game. Bishop has to drop back, and I guess castles, yes. So here the big question is if we will see the anti-martial again, or if, because this is one of the big junctions in this opening, of course the very big move is c3, that I know a lot of people are rooting for, because it allows the martial attack by white, by black I mean, that you can see I have a video on called The Art of Calm, when this opening was invented. It is with d5 against c3, but I don't think it is likely at all that we will see this opening in World Championship play, because the players are so well prepared and this opening is so dynamic, so the risk that white will fall in a trap that is impossible to get out of again is so high that I think it's very, very unlikely that Carlsen-Nepomniachtchi will allow this. But we will see. Last time he played h3, this pawn, advancing it in the anti-martial. He did not. Here he plays the proper anti-martial, the sort of main version of the anti-martial with a4. So bishop b7, looking at this pawn, putting the bishop on a long, strong diagonal. Classical play. This pawn is defended with d3, and we see d6, so a sort of symmetrical play we have going on here, looking still very much similar to the first game, but we have this deviation with a4 instead of h3. So this knight, this is one of the more advanced concepts in the Ruy Lopez. We have this knight here that comes here. Let's see if I can draw maybe an arrow. I can. And this knight has an interesting journey. So it wants to come here, and from here it wants to go either to g3, or it can also consider coming to e3, depending on what the position calls for. And what it can do from these squares is it can look at that's a strange way, but I guess it can look at f5, and on f5 it will have a very great attacking outpost that can lead to a strong attack against the king. From e3, the knight can also look at d5, which would be more geared towards controlling the center, attacking the center, instead of attacking the king. Both are very reliable strategies. So we again see a sort of, if you can see, the position is quite symmetrical on both sides. We have the same pawn structure in the middle. The knights are a little bit different and the bishops are a little bit different, but there is not too much of a dynamic imbalance in this game so far. This may be about to change when this knight is starting its journey. We see h6. Very logical to control g5, so a bishop or knight will not land there. Instead, the bishop just goes to d2. It hasn't gone there before because this knight needed d2 for its route from b1, d2, f1. So that's why the move order is like this, and a safety first move here with bishop to f8. This can look strange, particularly to a beginner maybe, but this bishop is quite bad. It is locked in behind these pawns, so it does not have a lot of mobility. So you, as the black player in this position, you have to figure out how to utilize this piece, how to have it do something. And when you move it back here to f8, you allow for this rook to again see the pawn on e5, and you defend g7, and that can look like it's maybe not that interesting because g7 is not attacked at all. But if the bishop does something, anything, it is way better than if it's doing nothing. And when you have a good defense on g7, you can play. It allows for a more wide variety of different strategies that are available to you, because you you don't have to fear getting checkmated that much, because g7 is the main square for a checkmating attack in these particular positions. So we see the knight going the route towards the center. So now, instead of going here where it could only see f5, it went to e3 instead, where it can also see d5. And yes, knight e7 is the new way to play this opening. In the olden times, back in the 70s and 80s, they would play this differently. But particularly a guy like Karpov against, well, basically anybody in the early 80s and late 70s showed that he showed game after game after game that this doesn't really work. There are some famous examples there that you can go look up if you are interested in chess history. I recommend in a slightly different version of the Ruy Lopez, but the Karpov's game in against Wolfgang Unziger in the Ruy Lopez really shows the dangers of this opening if you play with the knight just a little bit wrong. Okay, so let's see what's going on. We see c4. So we will start to see some blood on the board now. This is going to be the first capture. I think we will see b takes c and then bishop takes. Well, we see b takes c, but we didn't see bishop takes. We saw knight takes. I think this, let's just look in the database. Well, yes, this is a new move, so this is probably something that the team behind Carlsen-Nepomniachtchi has come up with. And let's talk a little bit about that, because there is something, this game is historical in that according to supercomputers, it is the most accurate game of chess that has ever been played in a World Chess Championship match. So what does that mean? It means that at every single move, the strongest chess supercomputers have not been able to come up with a better move than what either side played. So according to our strongest analytical tools today, this game is perfect. It is a perfect game. Now, is that what you want of a World Championship game? I would say yes, but I would also say no. Because what do you think the result of perfect play is? I will let you chew on that for a little bit, and let's get on with it. Knight goes back, makes a lot of sense, and the rook comes to the open c-file, the semi-open c-file, where it very logically can see c7. So I think the opening is going quite well for both players. No major weaknesses, but I like the practical chances maybe of Jan's position here. Okay, so a5 here probably helps this bishop to be able to come to a6. It also really takes b4 into control for Magnus here, for black, so that a knight can maybe land on that square later. What Magnus really wants to do, and always wants to do in the Ruy Lopez, is to play pawn from d6 to d5, unleashing this bishop, which would also look at b4, which would be a focal point of attack for black. Black's bishop gets improved, and here we can see it's starting to look at g7. If everything opens up, that is where you want it. That is also incidentally why there is a bishop on f8, very prophylactically already taking care of potential threats. That is how World Championship level players play chess. Bishop does not want to come to a6 and be on this diagonal. Instead, it goes back to the original square. You can see that Magnus has sort of undeveloped both of his bishops here, but this is where they are in their best positions apparently, and from this square we have this very nice long diagonal. Let's see if I can make a little nice arrow. Maybe I could. This is a place you would like to come with the bishop, so I guess we will see h3 defending against that. No, a more direct approach. We are just busting the center open. This is a brave move, but also possibly a move that is still in Jan's opening preparation. So he knows what he is doing here. So we bust open the center, we see an exchange. I guess we will have a recapture by the knight. Yes, and that, I guess that because this bishop is quite strong, and if you have no particular reason, I guess particular is the is the word. I think I've been saying particularly like 200 times in this video. If you have watched so far in the video, please include the word particularly in your comments so I can see how much of the video you watch. Let's see, so the bishop, if you don't have a particular reason to prefer the knight over the bishop, then you will prefer the bishop because they are generally accepted to be a little bit stronger than the knights. So we can recapture with the queen, and here we actually see that the checkmating type threat that I talked about earlier is it's on now, but already defended against nicely by the bishop. So bishop to e6. So we are fighting for the center. I think Magnus would very much like a way to be able to play d5 himself and break in the center in the same way that Jan has been able to break in the center. Now we see h3, just to make sure that we will not have anything landing on here, just a small, nice positional move. And let me remind you, also a perfect move according to both grandmasters who have analyzed this game. I read some reports, even though I haven't analyzed the game myself. I read some reports from top grandmasters, and they have not been able to come up with any improvement on either side, and the same goes for the strongest chess computers in the world. Very impressive. c6 here, we are still trying to play d5. I supported this with the bishop, and this bishop retreat, and maybe we are going to see the queen also retreating and trying to maybe get checkmate threats, threatmate checks, or checkmate threats against h7. This would involve possibly, like, if we were playing a beginner or just a normal person, we could try something like queen to d3, then exchange this bishop for this knight. If we see a recapture by the queen, we could push e4, and when the queen moved, we would have checkmate from the battery here. That is the type of threat that you will not see Magnus Carlsen fall for. And indeed, he immediately strikes in the center with a move that he has prepared for some time. And my computer wanted to go to the start of the game. But here we are, d5, and well, how do we handle this in the perfect way? You know, I am not even going to guess. This position is extremely complicated, and I think it's, well, I think I'm not a strong enough player to try and find the perfect move here. I would probably just play e takes d. What I would probably play. It's logical, opens up the rook. It doesn't seem to give me any particular advantage, but it also doesn't seem to hurt my position. Instead, apparently, we see this particular move, sorry, e5, attacking the knight, so I guess we will see pawn takes knight, and then queen takes queen, rook on a, no, not rook on a, but rook on e takes queen, so that we keep protection of this, and then pawn takes knight, and then we have a strong pawn here that we don't want to recapture with the g pawn, so we have to either find a solution for that, or maybe just do this whole thing in a different way. Well, the knight is taken. Okay, I'm correct so far. Let's see if it is this rook, and I don't think it's going to be this rook because this pawn is attacked, or maybe we need this rook to protect. Nope, it is indeed the other rook. And here, so my question here, of course, is can it really be true that we want to take this? It is under, and if we don't take this, it is attacked by the bishop, and if we don't take it, then probably it's going to capture on g7. Okay, so here's a clever way to do it, maybe. Getting more pieces off. We do see a capture, but now we can capture the bishop. Pawn takes, and then I guess either right now, king takes pawn, or maybe later, because this pawn is not being protected anytime soon. We see it immediately. And king f1 again from Carlsen-Nepomniachtchi. He also played this move in game 1, in a very nice fashion. He seems to like this move. Rook wants to take control of the file. It is challenged. King is improved. Will we see a cool looking king e2 here? No, we see a perfect, but also maybe not that exciting rook exchange. And another perfect rook exchange, right? And that is actually what I'm talking about. So of course I am happy that we have reached a point where the world's best chess players can play so perfect chess. So I think that's really a reflection of their strength, and I think that ties very well into the story of this being a chess world championship. However, draws are not the most fun result. It's not the most exciting, and chess with perfect play is believed to be a draw. It makes a lot of sense. It is virtually a symmetrical game, with the only difference being that one player goes first and the other player goes second. And this has to be a draw. Only thing black has to do is to get this pawn and this pawn off the light squares, so they will not be attacked by this. This pawn structure is easily defended by the king. This pawn is impossible to get to this pawn because it's not a dark square, so this bishop can't get at it. And you can see here how, let's see if I can make some arrows. How is the black king ever going to infiltrate? It's not possible, simply not legal. So let's see how they handle their technique. And now after c5 we need to keep the bishop on c2, looking after our only weak pawn, so that when it is attacked it will not lose it. And now you can see this square is under control, this square is under control, this square is under control. So if the king had to come in, it had to go all the way here, 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 and the only thing white has to do is move the king there, and then there's absolutely no way to make any progress. Okay, so we see a repetition like this, and that's the game. So there you have it, the most perfect game ever played in World Championship history. Also maybe not the most exciting game, but it is very, very impressive that these players, that Magnus and Jan, are able to play at this level. I also think that the people who doubt Jan's skill should take note, because it takes two to tango, and Magnus was not the only player who played perfectly, so did Jan. Well, that is my recap of Game 3 of the World Chess Championship. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope I will see you in the next video. And thanks to all of you